The globalists have signed the North American Union Pact. We are going into it. And joining us from the Fox News studios, a very busy man, is Patrick Buchanan, Patrick J. Buchanan, with a new book, State of Emergency. He, of course, a few years ago wrote The Death of the West, and we may already be dead, ladies and gentlemen. Pat Buchanan, thanks for coming on with us.
Well, thank you very much, Alex, for having me.
Tell us, sir, why you decided to write a second book on this subject and break down the new developments that have happened and explain to us how this is the state of emergency, the Third World War, the Third World invasion, and the conquest of America.
Well, I looked at the situation, and as it came up, and we were engaged in this battle ever since last December and all the way up through this year. And it seemed to me, looking at it, looking at the numbers, looking at what's going to happen if we don't get control of the border, and if there is a Bush amnesty or a McCain-Kennedy amnesty, I think that we're looking at how America ends. You take a look at civilizations and empires, and I've studied them, and how they end invariably is when the population ceases to reproduce itself, as native-born Americans are doing, inevitably the great nations are invaded peacefully from foreign lands, and then you have the decomposition, the breakup of the body, if you will, when the soul, which is patriotism, dies. And as you look at what is happening to America, the incapacity of our leaders even to control the borders, even to control the doors to our own national home, and the magnitude of the invasion, 36 million immigrants here, more than almost as many as all that ever came in our history, and 12 million of them illegally, 6 million tried to get in Bush's watch. The Mexican government looking upon the United States as a dumping ground for its poor and unemployed, a tripling of the third world people not from Mexico, a tripling in 3 years of those caught at the border, these being turned, released, and let go. I don't see how, Alex, you stop the invasion if we do not stop it cold now with a security fence, no amnesty, and start punishing businesses that hire illegals and cut off all welfare benefits.
Well, you're absolutely right, sir. There's so many facets I want to go over here. You mentioned, and you've got the statistics in your book, that we now have in this country as many current immigrants as we had in the 200-plus years before that. And if they were coming here wanting this to join the United States, that'd be one thing. Most of them are vehemently saying they want to bring down the United States. They want a La Reconquista. I was listening to NPR coming back from Dallas this weekend, and I heard them bragging on Latino USA that, well, people don't like it that Mexicans are taking over New Orleans. Well, this used to be Spanish anyways, and the immigrants say this is Mexico. And they were snickering on the program because the liberals of this country hate this country, and they love what's happening.
Well, a lot of them welcome what's happening. They are really anti-Western culture. They are in many ways anti, and there's a hostility. Remember Susan Sontag made her famous statement, the leftist intellectual, the white race is the cancer of human history. Many are rejoicing in the fact that the America that we loved and grew up in and we inherited from our parents, that this is disappearing. It is being inundated. The culture is being inundated. It's being split apart. All of these things people are welcoming under the name of multiculturalism. But when the culture dies, the unifying culture of a country, the country itself dies, Alex.
Well, Ray Nagin got criticized when he just said, listen, this city's culture is a chocolate city, and we don't like the fact that the majority is now going to be foreigners or openly say this is Mexico. Ray Nagin's absolutely right.
Well, look, black people are as American as apple pie. I grew up in Washington, D.C. It was a segregated city, a southern city. But at the same time, African Americans or black Americans and white Americans, we were marinated in the same culture. We had the same teams we rooted for. We watched the same TV shows, listened to the same radio, went to the same movies. When we went to schools, the schools may have been segregated, public schools, but we studied the same literature, studied the same language, the same history, the same heroes, the same holidays. We were one people. If you had called a black American in those days, they were called Negroes, if you called them an African then, you'd have been punched in your face. And so we were one people. But what's happening now when you got, half of Los Angeles County doesn't even speak English in its own home, we're balkanizing. we're breaking up culturally, linguistically, and socially.
I remember 8 years ago a 10-part series in the San Antonio Express News, written by Mr. Gonzalez, excellent pieces, where they went and 7 South Texas towns fly the Mexican flag in the U.S. No one is allowed to speak English in the court proceedings. You don't see the ACLU and the feds running down there to stop that, but you see them going after sheriffs who say they're going to arrest illegal aliens. Isn't this about the New World Order, Pat? Isn't this about breaking up the U.S. by hook or by crook?
Well, that is a huge, huge part of it. You know, many of these huge corporations, it used to be really proud American corporations that built the weapons that won World War II, now all declare themselves global corporations. And their ambition is to remove all national barriers and frontiers so they can move people and goods wherever they want to, which they feel is most efficient for the company. So they put the company ahead of the country. And they genuinely believe that what we need is a global market where these big corporations can move all over the global market, and there's a global government there that runs it all. This is the New World Order idea. And frankly, there is a program, and I write about it in a column for tomorrow morning, Alex, but it's also in the book. It's the North American Union concept. Vicente Fox has signed on. The foreign minister of Mexico talks about complete economic integration or complete integration of the two countries. The Council on Foreign Relations is talking about the erasure of the borders. He said the way to solve the illegal alien problem is let them all come in, erase the border, and have Canada, the United States, and Mexico be one union. In other words, like the European Union, and that is to merge with the European Union eventually into the, if you will, the New World Order of nations and peoples.
Now,
so
Pat,
that there's one world.
Pat, how do we in the past, you talking about this decades ago, myself for over a decade, we would be called conspiracy theorists, but David Rockefeller published his memoirs 2 years ago and said, I've been accused of wanting one world government and getting rid of the U.S. Well, I stand guilty as accused. That's exactly what I want. These people openly are calling for the end of this country.
They are out of the closet. That's exactly right. Walter Cronkite said virtually the same thing. And folks say that, look, America, what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to strengthen and empower the UN. We're all going to have to surrender some of our sovereignty. We're going to have these a global institution prevent wars by putting down, by being supreme over nations and countries. What that is, Alex, is an act of wholesale treason against what the Founding Fathers believed and what they fought for and what many of them died for.
Pat, we